My maid of honor whispered, "Don't walk out there." My family had a mic, a letter, and a replacement groom in row 3. What they didn't know, I'd already built the case. I'm a litigation paralegal. My father was holding a microphone at my wedding altar, and he hadn't been asked to speak. That was the first thing I registered through the gap in the garden door. The wireless mic, the kind the venue uses for toasts, gripped in both hands the way my father holds things when he's been coached on what to do with them. My mother stood beside him with a folded letter pressed flat against her chest, spine straight, the expression she wears when she's convinced herself that what she's about to do is actually for someone else's good. My sister Carla was behind them both, phone raised, the red recording dot already on. 200 guests in white garden chairs, gardenias everywhere. Marcus at the altar in his charcoal suit, hands clasped in front of him, that quiet smile that lives in his eyes and nowhere else. Rachel's hand was on my arm. Her voice was barely above a breath. "Donna, don't go out there." I looked at the microphone. I looked at the letter. I looked at my mother's face, which had the specific quality of a woman who has been rehearsing this moment and is ready. Then I looked at Marcus. He turned his head slightly, as though he could feel me watching through the door. His eyes found the gap, found me. He gave me the smallest nod I had ever seen. I straightened my dress. I picked up my bouquet. I pushed open the door. I kept walking. "Let me take you back 6 days. My name is Donna Ainsworth. I'm 31. I've been a litigation paralegal at Kessler and Ford for 6 years, working primarily under senior partner Diana Ford, who has 27 years in civil litigation, and the particular patience of someone who has learned to build cases the way you build a wall, one documented brick at a time, nothing assumed, everything verified. I compile evidence for a living. I organize depositions, cross-reference records, find the detail in the paper trail that changes the shape of a case. I had done this for strangers, dozens of times. I had never once imagined doing it for myself. Marcus Webb is 34. He is a high school history teacher with a master's degree from UConn, a classroom that students request by name, and the kind of steadiness that isn't dramatic enough to announce itself, but is simply always there, like good architecture. He proposed on a Tuesday night in our apartment kitchen with a ring he'd designed with a jeweler friend, and I said yes before he'd fully finished the question. My mother had reservations from the beginning, not stated ones. She's too careful for that. Just the particular texture of her silences when Marcus was mentioned, the slight recalibration of her expression when I talked about the wedding plans, the comments that were shaped like observations but functioned like suggestions. He seems content where he is. I just want to make sure you've thought about long-term stability. I heard the Whitmores are in town. Carol has really grown into herself. Her son Derek works in finance. Derek Whitmore. That name again. I filed it under. Mother being mother. I had a wedding to plan. 6 days before the ceremony, at 11:03 p.m. on a Sunday, Rachel Chen called me. Rachel has been my best friend since we were assigned adjacent lockers in 9th grade. She has been my maid of honor since I asked her at a dinner 3 years ago, and she cried on the spot, and she is one of precisely 4 people on earth who I trust completely and without condition. She is also, professionally, a data analyst, which matters for what comes next. She was sitting on my kitchen floor when I arrived, phone face down in her lap, the expression of someone carrying something heavy and uncertain about the right moment to set it down. "I need to show you something," she said, "and I need you to tell me how you want to handle it before I do." She turned the phone over, a screenshot, a group chat, one of those large family-adjacent threads that accumulates over years, people added and forgotten, the kind of chat where someone occasionally texts into the wrong thread by accident, and the consequences can be significant. This had been one of those accidents. Carol Whitmore, texting my mother, "Is everything ready for Saturday? Derek is nervous. I told him once the intervention works, Donna will come around." The $40,000 was worth every penny. I read it 3 times. I am a paralegal. I read for precision. I do not misread words. The $40,000 was worth every penny. Rachel watched me read it. She didn't say anything. "When was this sent?" I asked. "Thursday, 3 days ago, while I'd been at the venue confirming the chair arrangement. While Marcus had been writing his vows at our kitchen table, notebook propped against his coffee cup, I set the phone down on the floor between us. My hands were entirely still. Later, I would think about that, how the stillness wasn't calm. It was the specific immobility of a system processing something too large to move through quickly. "My mother took $40,000 from Carol Whitmore to stop my wedding," I said. "That's what it looks like. And she offered me $20,000 toward the venue." Rachel was very quiet. I had almost cried when my mother made that offer. I had apologized for being distant, for not including her enough in the planning, for the small Cold War we'd been conducting for 8 months over nothing I could fully name. I'd thought she was reaching toward me. I'd thought it was love, finally finding its practical expression. That money was never hers. Not a single dollar. I sat on my kitchen floor next to Rachel for a moment. Then I picked up my phone and called Marcus. He arrived 14 minutes after I called. He sat on the floor next to me, not across from me, not at the kitchen table, on the floor, which is something I have always loved about him, the way he meets you exactly where you are without making it a performance. He read the screenshot. He set the phone down. He was quiet for maybe 10 seconds. "We're not canceling this wedding," he said. "Marcus, listen to me." His voice was even. "Someone tried to buy your life away from you. That's what happened. And I need you to hear me when I say that doesn't work unless you let it. So we're not letting it." I looked at him for a moment. "I need to know what they're planning," I said. "Then let's find out." I called Diana Ford the next morning. Diana has been a senior partner for 14 years and a practicing attorney for 27. She also happens happens to be a person who is constitutionally incapable of tolerating bad actors in any context, professional or otherwise. And when I told her what Rachel had found, her silence lasted exactly 4 seconds before she said, "You have 6 days. What do you need?" "I need to know if what my mother did is legally actionable," I said. "Arranging an unsolicited intervention at a private religious ceremony using funds provided by a third party for the specific purpose of coercing a bride. Donna, that's tortious interference at minimum, potentially fraud depending on how the venue contract reads and whether your mother misrepresented herself in any capacity related to the ceremony." She paused. "Document everything. All of it. I'll review whatever you compile." "I always do," I said. Rachel pulled the Venmo records that afternoon. Carol Whitmore's account was partially public, the kind of default privacy setting that people forget to change, and which data analysts know exactly how to work with. 2 transfers to Janet Ainsworth, my mother's name. March 15th, $25,000. Memo, wedding arrangement. August 22nd, $15,000. Same sender, same recipient, same memo. $40,000 total. Transferred in 2 installments over 8 months. Labeled with the specific confidence of someone who didn't think anyone was looking, as exactly what it was. I printed the records. I printed the screenshot. I pulled the guest list my mother had submitted to the venue. 200 names, ostensibly combined with my list of 170. And I went through it the way I go through discovery documents, methodically, flagging every anomaly. 30 names appeared on my mother's editions that I had never seen before. I ran them one by one. 26 had a traceable connection to Carol Whitmore, neighbors, colleagues, people who appeared in the same social media circles, attendees of the same charity events. My mother had loaded the ceremony with Carol Whitmore's extended network, and in row 3, seat 7, Derek Whitmore, Carol's son, the man my mother had accepted $40,000 to insert into my wedding as an alternative future. I had never spoken to Derek Whitmore in my life. I sealed everything in a manila envelope. 2 copies, one for me, one for Diana. Then I called Reverend Patricia Miles. Reverend Miles has presided over our church for 19 years. She is a woman of such unruffled practical faith that she has, over her career, managed a groom who fainted, a cake that collapsed, a flash thunderstorm, and a ring bearer who released a live frog into the proceedings. She has seen things. I told her the ceremony might be interrupted. I told her by whom and approximately how. She was quiet for a moment. "What would you like me to do?" "Wait," I said. "If it happens, wait. And when it's over, continue. I'll be ready," she said. And then, after a beat, "Donna, I've married a lot of couples. Make sure he's the right one." "He's the right one," I said, without having to think about it. "Then I'll see you Saturday." The days between the call and the ceremony had the compressed, surreal quality of time moving at the wrong speed. I went to work. I finished a deposition summary for a contract dispute case. I went to the final dress fitting on Thursday. I had dinner with Marcus on Friday night at our kitchen table, and we talked about where we wanted to travel in our first year of marriage, and what we wanted the apartment to look like in 5 years, and whether we'd eventually want a house. And none of it was performance. It was just us, being what we were, which was the whole point. He knew everything. I'd told him the night Rachel came over. He'd read every document. He'd sat with it for a night and come back in the morning steady and certain and ready, and that steadiness was the thing I returned to every time the weight of what my mother had done threatened to collapse something in me. I did not call my mother that week. I did not alert my father, who I believed, and still believe, had been managed rather than recruited, handed a microphone and a role in something whose full architecture he hadn't seen. I did not confront my sister Carla, who has always positioned herself adjacent to drama with her phone raised, narrating rather than intervening. I let them prepare. I prepared better. The morning of the wedding, I put the manila envelope in my clutch bag. Rachel met me at the venue at 9. She looked at the clutch. She looked at me. "You're calm," she said. "I compile evidence for a living," I said. "This is the easiest case I've ever built. The bridal room at the Hartwell Garden venue is at the back of the property, separated from the ceremony garden by a path and a set of French doors with frosted glass panels and one gap at the edge where the seal doesn't quite meet. Standard construction. I had stood at that gap at 11:47 a.m. At 10 minutes before the ceremony was scheduled to begin, because Rachel had put her hand on my arm in the specific way that means stop, something is wrong. Through the gap, my father at the altar with the microphone, my mother with the letter, my sister with the phone, the red recording dot, and 200 people seated in garden chairs waiting for a wedding, not knowing they were about to be assigned a different kind of role. Rachel's hand on my arm. "Don't go out there." Marcus at the altar, the charcoal suit, the quiet smile, the nod so small no one else in the world could have read it. I went out there. The processional music played. I walked down the aisle alone. My father was on the platform, not at the back where he was supposed to be, and I had decided 3 days earlier that I would not wait for him. I walked at the pace I'd practiced, bouquet at the right height, eyes on Marcus, who watched me come toward him with an expression I will spend the rest of my life trying to find words for. I took my place beside him. I took his hand. Reverend Miles opened her book, and then my mother stepped forward. She took the microphone from my father. He surrendered it with the mechanical compliance of someone following a script he'd been handed too late to question, and she turned to face the congregation. Her voice was the voice she uses for serious occasions, measured, authoritative, the voice of a woman who has decided she is the most responsible adult in the room. "Before this goes any further, there is something everyone needs to hear." 200 people went completely still. She read the letter. I had not seen the letter before. It had been written for this moment, and it said what she needed it to say. Marcus had no savings, no family property, no capacity to provide the stability I deserved. It described the wedding as a mistake, which is a word she used twice. It described Derek Whitmore obliquely as someone who had always cared for me, which was a fiction so complete, it would have been impressive in another context. Then she pointed toward row 3. Derek is waiting. We can still fix this, Donna. 200 heads turned. Derek Whitmore sat in row 3, seat 7, in a charcoal suit that was almost the same shade as Marcus's. His head dropped. His hands went to his lap. He had the expression of a man who has realized, fully and finally, that he has been placed in a situation that was never actually about him, that he was a piece being moved on a board he didn't design, and that the best thing he could do now was be as small and still as possible. I looked at my mother. She was waiting. That was the thing I noticed. The waiting. The particular stillness of a person who has set a mechanism in motion and is watching for the expected result. I had been the expected result for 31 years. I squeezed Marcus's hand. He squeezed back. I turned to Rachel. She was already moving. She had the second copy of the envelope in her hands. I had given it to her the night before, told her exactly when to step forward. She walked to the edge of the podium the way she walks into any room she's decided to own, completely, without hesitation. I held out my hand toward my father. He looked at me. He looked at the microphone. And then, with the relief of a man who has been waiting for someone to make the decision he couldn't make himself, he placed it in my hand. I faced 200 people. I spoke the way I speak in deposition prep. Clear, unhurried, precise. The voice of someone who has spent 6 years learning that the truth doesn't need volume. It needs structure. I have some documents I'd like to share. I held up the Venmo records. March 15th of last year, Carol Whitmore transferred $25,000 to Janet Ainsworth. The memo reads, wedding arrangement. A murmur moved through the crowd. August 22nd, a second transfer, $15,000. Same sender, same recipient, same memo. I lowered the page. That's $40,000 paid by Carol Whitmore, whose son is sitting in row 3, seat 7. To my mother, over 8 months, for the specific purpose of arranging my marriage to a man I have never spoken to and did not agree to marry. 200 heads turned again. Derek sank an inch lower in his chair. I set the Venmo records on the podium. I held up the guest list comparison. My 170 names, my mother's additions, the 30 names I'd circled in red with their connections to Carol Whitmore's network annotated in the margin. My mother also added 30 guests to this ceremony, the majority of whom are connected to the Whitmore family, without my knowledge or consent. Into the silence, someone in the middle rows said it, not a whisper, a statement, the voice of a person who had just watched a thing become legible. She took the money. My mother's composure cracked from the center outward. I watched it happen in real time, the letter lowering, the shoulders shifting, the careful architecture of her certainty coming apart under the weight of 200 people who now understood what they were looking at. That's not, you don't understand what Carol and I, her voice had lost its register. She was helping us. She wanted to help. She paid you, I said. Quiet. Final. There's a difference. My mother swept the room with her eyes, looking for the ally that wasn't there. Then my father stepped off the platform. He didn't say anything. He walked past the first row, past the second, past the third, past Derek Whitmore, who did not look up. He walked all the way to the back of the garden and sat down alone in the last row, and the walk itself was the most honest thing I had ever seen him do. Derek stood up. He straightened his jacket. He stepped into the aisle without making eye contact with anyone. Carol reached from her seat and touched his sleeve. Derek, sit down. No, Mom. His voice was low and entirely certain. This is done. He walked to the garden gate and threw it, and the latch closed behind him, and row 3, seat 7 was empty. The white cushion still held the shape of him, a small, sad impression in the fabric where a man had sat who had been purchased as a future and rejected by the present. I looked out at 200 people. A few of them I recognized. Many I didn't. All of them were watching me with the particular attention of people who understand they are witnessing something that will still be making sense to them years from now. Does anyone else have something they'd like to say? Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Or can I get married now? Reverend Patricia Miles, 19 years of presiding, a frog, a collapsed cake, a flash thunderstorm, and now this. Stepped to the podium and opened her book with the unhurried ease of a woman who told a bride she would wait and meant it completely. Shall we begin? We began. Marcus and I were married at 12:34 p.m. on a Saturday in September, in front of 200 people, several of whom were crying for reasons that had nothing to do with the ceremony and everything to do with what had come before it. Reverend Miles kept the vows traditional, which felt right. After the morning we'd had, the plain words were the most powerful ones available. I do had never meant so much. My father did not walk me down the aisle, but he came back to the reception. He found me at the edge of the dance floor an hour into the evening, and he said the thing I'd been waiting my whole life to hear him say, which was simply, I'm sorry I let her go that far. Not a defense, not an explanation, just the admission, which cost him something, and which I accepted. We danced to the father-daughter song. It was late in the evening, after most of the toasts, and it wasn't what I'd planned, but it was real, which was better. My mother left before the reception ended. I don't know when exactly. There was a moment when I looked for her and she was gone, and the space where she had been was just garden chairs and half-finished champagne glasses and the particular relief of a room that has exhaled. Diana Ford filed a civil complaint on my behalf 4 weeks after the wedding. Tortious interference with contractual relations. Specifically, interference with the venue and efficient contracts my mother had co-signed as a contributing party, then attempted to void through the intervention. Unjust enrichment for the $20,000 venue contribution made with funds she did not disclose as belonging to a third party. The complaint named both my mother and Carol Whitmore as defendants. Carol Whitmore's attorney sent a settlement offer within 3 weeks. Diana described it when she called me as motivated. The terms included full restitution of the $20,000 venue contribution, plus a financial acknowledgement of damages. I won't give the number on Diana's advice, but I will say that it covered our honeymoon, our first year of mortgage payments on the house we'd just started looking for, and a donation to the nonprofit where Reverend Miles volunteers on weekends. My mother did not settle. My mother retained her own attorney and maintained for several months that everything she had done was an act of maternal concern. The discovery process, Diana told me with the quiet satisfaction of a woman who has built cases brick by brick for 27 years, was thorough. I won't tell you the outcome of that case here. I'll tell you that it resolved. I'll tell you that my mother called me on a Thursday evening 6 months after the wedding with a voice I hadn't heard from her before, smaller, without the managing register, just tired, and said that she had been wrong and that she was sorry and that she didn't know how to fix it, but she wanted to try. I told her I'd think about it. I'm still thinking. The wedding photographs arrived 10 weeks after the ceremony. We went through them at the kitchen table, Marcus and I, with coffee and the unhurried ease of two people who have nowhere else to be and nothing to perform for anyone. The photographer had been everywhere. She had caught the processional, the vows, the first dance, the late father-daughter song. She had also, without being asked, captured the moment I walked through the garden door. It's the photograph I keep going back to. I am mid-step, bouquet in hand, face forward. The door is swinging behind me. And in the gap, slightly blurred but entirely legible, my mother with the letter, the microphone, the whole elaborate machinery of a plan that had been months in the making. And in the foreground, at the altar, in sharp and perfect focus, Marcus, already looking at me, already knowing everything, already smiling.